Hello, I am Strength Coach Claire, and welcome to my talk on equipment for competitive powerlifting. Now, the reason I have put this together is because I've had a lot of clients who've come to me or got into strength training via a non-powerlifting route, usually for health or physique reasons, and then they become interested in powerlifting later on, but get very overwhelmed by all the equipment and belts and singlets and knee sleeves and all these things and whether they're needed or not and where to buy them from. And there is a lot that goes into making decisions when buying these things, and what you need to look out for. So I wanted to put together this resource so that I can refer people to this whenever they have questions about this particular topic. Now, when I'm talking about equipment here, I'm not talking about barbells and weight plates and squat racks. I'm talking about belts, knee sleeves, singlets, socks, shoes, all that good stuff. So it's your personal equipment. Now, before I get into this, I just want to talk about the distinction between classic and equipped, which are the two main types of competitive powerlifting. So classic powerlifting has become the most popular in recent years. And it's sometimes called raw powerlifting or unequipped powerlifting. And kind of contrary to what the name suggests, it does allow for some supportive equipment, such as knee sleeves and a belt. But you will wear a normal singlet, like a lycra singlet, and a t-shirt, and no knee wraps. This is what I'm going to be talking about mostly today, because this is what I do. This is what all my clients do. So when I go from this point on, I'm only going to be talking specifically about classic or raw powerlifting. There is also equipped powerlifting, which is the old school style. So this is where powerlifting originally came popular many years ago, but it is now less popular, and it involves wearing like a heavily supportive multiply suit, shirt, and knee wraps, which you typically wrap very tightly. And again, from this point on, you can forget about equipped lifting. That is not what I'm talking about. We're talking about classic or raw powerlifting here. Now, there are actually many different rules for what equipment you are allowed to wear within powerlifting, depending on what federation you compete in. And I personally compete in the IPF, which is the International Powerlifting Federation. All my clients, with a couple of exceptions, compete in the IPF, and it is considered the gold standard. They are the strictest, or certainly one of the strictest, in terms of like what you're allowed to wear and what equipment you're allowed. They're also the biggest and most popular federation. They have the most money, they have the most members, so it's very much considered the gold standard. And again, from this point on, I'm going to be talking about IPF specific competitions. Now, the IPF obviously is the international governing body. It covers the whole globe. But within the IPF, there are different sub-federations. So there's British Powerlifting, which is me and where I live and where most of my clients live. But then every country has their own. So I've put a couple here, like Irish Powerlifting, Powerlifting America. They're all affiliates of the IPF. And although they all have their own sort of setups within their own countries, they do all follow the same rule book when it comes to competition rules and equipment rules. And you can find that at the link that I've put here, which is powerlifting.sport. And then you're just going to click on ruled/code/info. There's a link. It should be obvious when you get there. And everything that I am going to be talking about, if you have any questions or you're still unsure about anything, that is the place to go. That's where you're going to get all the information that you need. And that link is going to be on every single slide from here to the end. So if you're unsure and you want more details and you want more information, that is where I recommend you go. Now, I wanted to pop a slide in here just to talk about the difference between having a specification for an item of equipment versus having to purchase from an approved brand, because they are different. And generally, non-specialist items such as your t-shirt, your socks, your underwear, your shoes, things that you wear every day, they have to meet certain specifications, but they don't have to be purchased from an approved brand. And often you can save a lot of money with those things. However, within the IPF, specialist items like your lifting belt, your knee sleeves, your singlet, they have to be purchased from a list of approved brands. And again, that list of approved brands can be found at this link at the bottom of the screen. I would generally recommend purchasing everything from an approved brand, because in that way, if you do purchase from there, your item can be used at any competition, at any federation, at any level, from local level all the way up to international level. However, I would always check the rule book for your federation just in case, because if you are not competing in the IPF, some federations have slightly different rules. For example, in the BDFPA, which is a lesser known federation here in the UK, you are not allowed to wear knee sleeves, for example. But in any federation that allows knee sleeves, if you purchase some IPF approved knee sleeves, they will be permitted in any other federation that allows knee sleeves. They are the gold standard in that respect. Now, just straight away, I have listed 3 brands here that I would recommend you buy from if you are based in the UK in particular. And the reason I put these here is just because they basically cover everything, and they give you a budget option and they give you more expensive quality options. And all 3 of these brands are excellent. If you live in other countries, there's more brands that are available in Europe, there's more brands that are available in the USA. But for the UK, these are kind of the big 3, I think most people would say. You've got Strength Shop, first of all, which has got this little logo here, which I think means strength in Chinese or something. Strength Shop is the most budget-friendly option for most things, and it's always going to be good for beginners, or if you're in your first few years of competing and you're not yet sure that you're going to be doing this long term. Strength Shop is a great place to start. SBD is a UK-based brand that are basically the gold standard when it comes to quality equipment for powerlifting. And they have an incredible reputation of providing amazing quality products that powerlifters at the highest level really, really love. Like, SBD sponsor a lot of the top level lifters. And they do really produce some of the best quality equipment. If you buy from SBD, it's probably going to last you pretty much your whole lifting career, barring disasters. There's also A7, which I would say is comparable with SBD in terms of quality. They don't quite yet have the same reputation as SBD, I would say. But what A7 does extremely well is fashion. So I would say SBD have really... A7 have decided that powerlifting is not very cool, and we're going to make it cool. So you'll see a lot of different colors and things like this with A7. It tends to be like the nicest looking stuff. They're always releasing new colorways and things like that. So A7 are a good option if you're UK based as well. Now then, I've also created a slide here for what you must have if you want to do any competition in the IPF, and then what you may have. So you don't necessarily need, but you may want, depending on your level and what your goals are. So things that you absolutely must have. These are non-negotiable. If you're on a budget, you only need these things. You don't need to worry about the other side. So they are a singlet. Singlet is what most people call it, but you might also call it a unitard, lifting suit, onesie, whatever you want to call it. But that is the all-in-one outfit that you have to wear that looks a bit ridiculous, but non-negotiable. The reason you have to wear a singlet is because they are very form-fitting. So they allow the referees to be able to see everything they need to see, like squat depth, elbow depth, and so on. So everybody has to wear the same kind of outfit. And there is a reason for that. It's not just because they like to punish us. You also have to have a t-shirt. I'm going to get onto details about the t-shirt in a minute. You have to have socks, including some long socks that cover your shins. You also have to have shoes for squatting, benching, and deadlifting. You are not permitted to only wear socks for lifting. You have to have shoes. And you also have to have appropriate underwear, which I am going to get onto as well. So those are things that you absolutely need if you want to do a powerlifting competition, no matter the level. Things that you may have that you don't necessarily need include your lifting belt, your knee sleeves, and your wrist wraps. None of these things are must-haves, and they can be quite expensive. So if you are on a budget and want to just give powerlifting a go, do not worry about your belts, knee sleeves, and wrist wraps. Just worry about the left-hand side of the screen here. So I'm going to go through the must-haves first, one by one, and then I'll finish up with the may-haves. So must-haves, starting at the bottom, underwear. So you have to wear pants. You're allowed to wear any standard briefs, thongs, etc. You may wear boxers. it seemed from the rule book, this wasn't entirely clear, that you can have short boxes like this, but you can't have long boxes like this. I think these are also meant to represent that they are athletic or supportive material, so they're not allowed. So it just has to be standard knickers of any kind, or standard briefs of any kind. For the ladies, any sports bra is permitted. They used to have a rule that you were not allowed any underwiring in your bra, but when I went to look for that in the rule book when making these slides, I could not find any reference to it. So it may be an old rule. You may be allowed to wear underwired bras now, but I don't think anyone really lifts weights in underwired bras. I think most women wear a sports bra, which is absolutely allowed. So that's the underwear. Socks then. So socks can be any color. They can contain any logo. Now, there's a couple of stipulations regarding sock length. When you wear knee sleeves, your socks must not be long enough to touch the knee sleeves, and you're usually only wearing knee sleeves for squatting. However, they must also be long enough to cover the shins when deadlifting, which seems like a contradiction. So I always say just bring 2 pairs of socks, one ankle length and one knee length, so that you're set for squats and deadlifts respectively. I own a pair of Strength Shop powerlifting socks, but you do not need to buy from one of the brands for these. It can be any color and any logo. It just needs to be an appropriate length. So you could go on Amazon, Primark, whatever you want to do to get your socks. T-shirt then. So there are a few specifications regarding T-shirts, but they don't have to be purchased from an approved brand. So your T-shirt must be cotton or cotton-like a cotton blend. So not that shiny, sporty, slippery material that you sometimes get, and not rubberized. So sometimes you see T-shirts for powerlifters that have a rubberized back that's nice and sticky for the bar in squats or for the bench in bench press. You're not allowed those. It has to have no rubberized material, no pockets, no reinforced seams, no buttons, no zips, no Velcro. So just a plain cotton or cotton-like T-shirt. It has to have a round neck with a high collar. So it can't be a V-neck and it can't be a low cut. It has to cover everything, and it has to be a round neck. It must cover your deltoids, but not past the elbows, and it must be form-fitting. So it has to be basically short-sleeved, tight-fitting, not really baggy, and not passing the elbows. It has to be plain and of a single color, but you are permitted logo types with the T-shirt that are not necessarily from approved brands. So you can have approved brand logo T-shirts, obviously. You can also have the lifter's nation, the lifter's name, the event in which the lifter is competing. So a lot of the time, competitions do event T-shirts, and you're allowed to purchase one of those and wear that. That's no problem. But you can also have, which is quite nice, I think, you can have the lifter's club, coach, team, individual sponsor on the T-shirt, but only at national meets and below. You can't have that at international meets. That's fine, going to be fine for most people. So with all this in mind, I've got a few examples here of T-shirts that you could wear in a competition. This black one here on the left is a Strength Coach Claire T-shirt. So it's my team or coach T-shirt. It's plain black, it's cotton, it's got short sleeves and a round neck, and it's got my logo here at the top in the middle. It's £20 on my merchandise shop. This one in the middle, again, round neck, short sleeves, plain, one color, no logos at all. This is from Amazon, and it's £7.90 or something like that. Very cheap, and you can get it in a variety of colors. So something like that, if you're on a budget, is going to be absolutely fine for your competition. And then we've got this one here, which is a approved brand T-shirt. So this is from A7, form-fitting round neck, short sleeves, and it costs £32. So you can see you can do this on a budget, or you can spend a bit more money. It depends really what you want. But that's what we're looking at with T-shirts. Moving on to shoes then. So shoes must cover the whole foot, so no open toes, no open backs. They must have a firm, flat, non-compressible sole. Okay, so I'm going to get on to examples in a minute, but being fully in contact with the ground throughout the whole shoe is good. It's what we want. Okay, so no wedges or anything like that. For squatting, you may prefer to wear a heeled weightlifting shoe, in which case your heel should not exceed 5 centimeters. It's fine to wear heels for squats if you want to, but only of a certain height. If you buy any of the normal brand lifting shoes that you can get on the market, they're not going to exceed 5 centimeters. That is quite a high heel. Bench, likewise with squats, if you're going to wear a heeled shoe, although generally I would recommend a flat shoe for benching, as you would wear with deadlift, unless you have a good reason for a heel. The reason being, you can usually, if you connect more connected to the ground, you can get better leg drive and so on. There is a case for me for wearing a heel for bench, but it's going to be on an individual basis. It's really down to your preference. Deadlift should always be as flat and close to the ground as possible. So you may end up bringing 2 shoes, which is what I do, 1 pair for bench and deadlift, and then 1 pair for squat. Any brands of shoe are allowed, but you're not allowed to only wear socks. You must wear some kind of shoe. So to give some examples here of what's some examples that are commonly used, these here on the left are the Strength Shop deadlift slippers. So if you're somebody who likes to lift in socks, these are going to be the best option for you. They're essentially a sock with a sole, but they're just shoey enough that they count as shoes for competition purposes, and they're only £16. So they're going to be great. The only time I wouldn't recommend these is if you're doing sumo deadlift, because they don't have much lateral support. So as you're driving outwards with your feet, they're not going to support you very much. But having said that, I do know sumo deadlifters who wear these and they get on absolutely fine. These at the top here, the 40 to 60 pound ones, are from a brand called Notorious Lift, and they have become very popular in recent years for selling flat lifting shoes. Again, they're a little bit more than the Strength Shop deadlift slippers. They have a bit more to them, a bit more structure, but they are very flat. They have a nice wide base, so you can really spread your toes, and they're very comfortable. They're going to be great for benching and deadlifting and squatting if you enjoy squatting in a flat shoe. The Converse I've put up here, but nowadays I wouldn't generally recommend Converse for powerlifting competitions. I think they're great if you're general population and you just want to get into lifting for fun. But for powerlifting competitions, I no longer recommend them. And I say that as somebody who wore Converse for my first 3 years of competing. The reason why I don't recommend them now is because you can see that the sole is not completely flat on a Converse. It tends to curl up a little bit at the toe. And what this does when you're bench pressing and your foot has to be fully in contact with the ground at all times is sometimes look as though your foot is not fully in contact with the ground because of the curve on the sole. So I generally don't recommend these for powerlifting nowadays. But if you have them and it's all you've got, they are fine. They're allowed. They're permitted. It's just got to be something you are aware of. And it really depends on the referee on the day about how they're going to feel about the curve in the sole. Now, these 2 on the right of the screen are for squats only, I would recommend. They're both heeled weightlifting shoes. The top option is the Adidas Powerlift, and they're a more budget-friendly option of weightlifting shoes, and they're around £90. The bottom option are Nike Romaleos. They're £180, so very expensive. They're going to last you for years. They're good quality shoes. But yeah, they're heeled shoes if you wanted to wear heels for your squats or even bench press. The £90 Adidas Powerlifts are the ones that I currently wear. And the reason I wear those, I've actually downgraded from a more expensive lifter, is because these ones have a slightly lower heel. So if you like a small heel but not a real heel for squats, then they're a good option as well. Singlet then. So now we're moving on to an item that has to be purchased from an approved brand if you are competing in the IPF or its affiliates. And I've put 3 options up on the screen here. So you've got the Strength Shop singlet. They only have it in one color. They only have one style. It is $52.99. So it's going to be the cheapest option out there for you if you're on a budget, and it's going to be absolutely fine. The one in the middle is the SBD Powerlifting Singlet. These come in a variety of colors. I'm showing here the Forge colorway, which is the gray and orange, but they also have their classic, which is black and red. They're £80 for those. So you can see they're quite expensive. But again, SBD are known to be the gold standard amongst the whole powerlifting community. They provide singlets to international level athletes. and all that good stuff. Here on the right of the screen, we have the A7 Luno singlet, which has become very, very popular in recent years because, again, they have a load of pretty colours and they are quite a flattering fit. They've got the side panels, which are usually in a different colour, which gives the illusion of curves. So just a bit more of a flattering fit compared to the other brands. So yeah, I think if that's something that you are bothered about, you can pay a little bit more than for the Strength Shop one, for example, and get a nice color singlet like that. So again, those are three of the biggest brands. There are other brands, but any of those three brands are going to have you covered. The other thing to say about singlets is in the last couple of years, they've introduced a new rule that you're allowed to wear a full length singlet, which is basically a singlet with leggings rather than shorts. So it goes all the way down to the ankles. They introduced this primarily for Muslim women who want to compete in powerlifting. However, if you choose to wear a full length singlet, you may not also wear knee sleeves because they consider leggings underneath knee sleeves to be of benefit from a strength perspective. If you wear leggings under your knee sleeves, you can usually get on tighter or smaller knee sleeves, which gives you a bit more help when you're squatting. So knee sleeves have to be worn on bare legs, essentially. So that's everything from the must-have column. I'm now moving on to things that you may have if you wish, but you don't have to have for your first few competitions. And if you're not bothered about being competitive, you never have to have. These things you may wish to buy if you're wanting to be competitive, if you're leveling up in the sport, you're concerned about what other people are doing, and you really want to maximize your performance. Because some of these things do actually offer a benefit in terms of strength. You can potentially lift more weight if you wear these things from this point on. Okay, so that's kind of why people wear them. They're very popular and lots of people have them, even though they're not must-haves. So first one is knee sleeves. There's a lot to say about knee sleeves. They must be purchased from an approved brand. Again, the list is on the screen at the link at the bottom. A knee sleeve is a tube of neoprene. It is not a wrap. It's not something that you wrap around and around and around your leg. It's just a tube of neoprene that you're going to pull on. And that's the distinction here. Only knee sleeves are allowed, not knee wraps. There are three types. Broad types. There's probably some overlap between some of these, but there are three broad types. There's the original standard 5 to 7 millimeter neoprene ones. So I owned a pair of these for my first 10 years of powerlifting, and they are still going strong. I've recently replaced them, but I still have them and they're still going strong. More recently, in the last few years, a few brands have come out with super stiff knee sleeves, which is version 2. These are typically 7 millimeter, very high density neoprene, very, very stiff. I would only recommend these to late intermediate or advanced lifters. They are highly uncomfortable and they can alter the way you squat quite a lot because they really change the sensation when you're squatting. So I would not buy these unless you are very experienced at squatting with knee sleeves already. And if you're prepared to suffer, because they are very, very uncomfortable. And then type 3 is the SBD powerlifting sleeves. So SBD were kind of one of the last brands to come out with their next generation knee sleeve after all the other brands released their super stiffs. And we all thought that they were going to be super stiffs. And it turned out that they weren't exactly. They were actually somewhere in between the original knee sleeve and the new super stiffs, probably leaning more towards the super stiffs. Now, I would typically recommend super stiff these powerlifting knee sleeves to somebody who is quite serious about powerlifting and really wants to powerlift forever. And they want a pair of knee sleeves that is going to last them forever. But are maybe not ready for the super stiffs or are not sure the super stiffs are going to be for them because they are very uncomfortable. Typically at the highest level in the sport, so we're talking about like worlds, like international championships, you see a 50-50 split between the SBD powerlifting sleeves and the super stiffs these days, leaning slightly more towards the SBDs because SBD has a lot of influence and sponsorship and things like that. But yeah, I think the original knee sleeves are still very popular, particularly at a local level. And again, to anybody who is like a recreational powerlifter in their first few years of powerlifting, looking for their first knee sleeve, I would lean towards getting an original neoprene sleeve because, again, it's going to take you a long, long way. You're not going to need to upgrade it for many, many years, if at all. Now, just to give some examples of each of these. So type 1, the original standard 7mm neoprene knee sleeves. I put 3 options on screen here, again, from the 3 brands that I've been talking about. So the Strength Shop Inferno knee sleeves, a 7mm neoprene, they're £45. So they're going to be the best budget option. You do have to look out on the Strength Shop website because they have other lines of knee sleeves other than the Infernos that are not IPF approved. So make sure you check the list. They do on the website helpfully have a little IPF approved logo on the things that are IPF approved. So just make sure you're looking out for that. So these are the best budget option. If I've got somebody asking me what they should buy and they're very worried about the cost of all this, and they just want a decent knee sleeve to get them started, that is what I would recommend to them. You then have the SBD standard 7mm sleeve. Now, this is what I would recommend to most people as a first knee sleeve. I bought some standard SBD knee sleeves when I first started powerlifting. They were actually all that was really available at that time. And they lasted me for my first 10 years of powerlifting. I have only in the last 6 months progressed to a pair of stiff sleeves, and I have been powerlifting for 12 years, getting on for 12 years. So the SBD standard knee sleeves are a really, really, really excellent sleeve. I cannot state that enough. What SBD do that's different from the other brands is they make their sleeves out of one piece of neoprene and it has a spiral seam, which means that they really work with the movement of your body. So when you bend and you're in the hole, they give you that spring back out. It also means they're a lot more resilient. They last a lot longer. You don't get weaknesses in the seam because the seam is like evenly distributed around the whole seam, the whole sleeve. It's not just that one up and down line at the back of your knee, or 2 up and down lines depending on how the sleeves are constructed. So again, the SBD standard 7mm sleeves are going to be a fantastic first sleeve. They're going to take you all the way from beginner to advanced, no problem. Another option, again, if you're very into pretty colors and things like that, the A7 have their own Inferno sleeve. The cone sleeves, they're £55, so they're sort of in between these two in terms of budget. They're a decent sleeve. You see some people using these. They're not as popular as the SBD standard sleeve, but they're a good option for you to consider. Type 2 then, these are the high density, very, very stiff sleeves. And again, I would only recommend these to late intermediate or advanced lifters who've already got lots of experience. They're very good squatters already, and they're used to squatting with knee sleeves on. I've put 3 options up here. The A7 rigor mortis are probably the most popular in the UK at the moment, I think. Again, because they have come out with a large array of colours, and they are a very good sleeve. So this is what I recently upgraded to myself, was an A7 rigor mortis sleeve. They're £100, so you can see these sleeves, being more high density, being stiffer, are a bit more pricey than the standard neoprene sleeves. But the A7 rigor mortis is a good option if you're looking to upgrade. Again, you see these used quite a lot at a high level. The Inza Ergo Pros I've also put up here. So Inza is a brand I've not yet mentioned. They're not a UK-based brand, although you can buy them in the UK. But Inza were the first to come out with the very, very stiff sleeves. So they're also very popular at the high levels because they were the first movers. So Inza Ergo Pro is also a good option, slightly more expensive than the rigor mortis. I've also put Strength Shop Inferno Pro up here. They're a little bit of a more budget-friendly stiff sleeve, but I can't vouch for these because I don't use them myself and I don't know anybody who does. Most people, when they're upgrading to a stiff sleeve, will go for one of the more renowned brands and spend a bit more money. So yeah, that's the stiff sleeves. I would always recommend before you buy a pair of stiff sleeves, just consult with your coach and do a lot of reading around to decide whether they're going to be for you, because I know a lot of people have started with a stiff sleeve thinking it was going to like do magic for their squat, and then they've gone back either to a standard sleeve or to the type 3 sleeve, which I'm going to talk about, because they just found it too much. They found it through their technique off and things like that. So it is something to consider. Type 3 then is one little brand all on their own, and it's the SBD powerlifting sleeves. Now these are quite pricey. They're £110. But again, these are going to be the absolute gold standard in terms of powerlifting sleeve. You see these used by all the top lifters at the highest level. If you buy a pair of these, they're going to last you forever. They're much stiffer than the SBD standard neoprene sleeve, but they're not quite as aggressive as the previous type 2 that I've spoken about. The benefit of these is they also have the spiral seam that I talked about before. So they're that high quality, resilient knee sleeve. They're a little bit more they're a bit more flexible than the super stiff, but they're very compressive. So they're going to really compress and support your joint. They also have all SBD sleeves are treated with like an antibacterial treatment, so they don't get smelly, or when they get sweaty, they don't get smelly and things like that. So these, again, I see a lot of people try the stiff sleeves and then decide to buy these instead, because these are just a bit more of a comfortable, they're never going to be comfortable, but less aggressive knee sleeve. It's not going to have as much of an impact on your squat than the super stiff. Now, I just wanted to put a note on sizing here for knee sleeves. So typically for a type 1, so your standard neoprene sleeve, you want to size down on what the size chart recommends you, because these sleeves should be tight and they should be difficult to get on. The way these knee sleeves work is by compressing your knee joint so that when you squat down, your joint is compressed and it wants to stand back up again. So you can have a look on YouTube for many tutorials on how to get on tight sleeves, but they should not just slide over your calves in one go. It should not be an easy time to get these on. If you can slide them over your calves like that, they're going to be way too big. You want a small, tight sleeve. Obviously within reason, with the exception, if you skip to part 3 here, is that you have to be able to get your sleeves on and off unassisted in a competition. So you can't have people helping you. You can't use talc to get them on. You can't use oil to grease up your legs. You can't use straps to pull them on. You have to be able to get them on and off unassisted. So they must be small and tight, but big enough that you can get them on by yourself. For types 2 and 3, so the super stiffs and the SBD stiffs, you should go true to size. Absolutely do not size down with these knee sleeves. You will cut off the blood circulation to the leg. You will be stuck in them and you'll have to cut them off. I have seen this happen so many times because people move from the standard neoprene to the stiff. They think, oh, I need to size down again. And then they can get it on, but they can't get it off. A lot of the time, you end up in a panic mode and you end up destroying your knee sleeve in order to be able to get it off. If you are between sizes with a tight sleeve, size up. A7, who do the rigor mortis sleeves, are very good because they have a size guide where you input your measurements of your quad, knee, and calf, and then they tell you which size to buy. And again, if you're, say, a large in quad, but a medium in knee, you should buy a large. If you are between sizes, go up. I cannot reiterate that enough. And I think you'll find that a lot of the brands on their website will say the same thing because they get sick of people ripping their sleeves when pulling them off or whatever it is. So that's knee sleeves. Moving on to the belt then. So belts are typically worn for squat and deadlift. They must be purchased from an approved brand. And there are 3 main types of belt that you can buy. There's a prong, which either is a single or a double prong. Typically, I'd avoid double prong because the cons of a prong belt are just doubled when you've got a double prong. So the pros of a prong belt is that they're easy to adjust the size. You can easily go up or down a notch on your belt, and they're also the cheapest usually. However, the cons is that they are tricky to get on and off quickly and to get them tight enough. And with a double prong, when you've got 2 prongs to try and get in, it's a bit more difficult than with a single prong. So if you're going for a prong belt, usually I would go with a single prong. The second option is a lever buckle belt. So these ones are the ones that you see people ping on and off. I've got the pros and cons the wrong way around here, but the cons are that you need a screwdriver to adjust the size. You can't adjust them easily. And the pros are that it's easy to get on and off quickly. You just flick the lever and you're out. But they are a bit more pricey. Again, that's a con. The adjustable lever then is the third type, and that is kind of the best of both worlds, but you can only get this from two brands that I'm aware of, A7 and SBD. So the pros of an adjustable lever is basically you get the best of both worlds. They're easy to adjust the size, you can easily move up and down a notch, and they're easy to get on and off quickly. However, the cons are that they are typically very expensive and they're limited just to a couple of brands. And at the moment, I think both of those brands have their special buckle adjustable lever things patented. So they are only available by those brands and they are quite expensive. A couple of other points on belt before I move on to the specific ones that you can buy, examples. You can also get different widths. So the width is like how wide is your belt. 3-inch and 4-inch are the most common. 3-inch you don't see used very often. It's okay for very, very small people, so like the super mini weight classes, or sometimes super heavyweights who need a bit more room and find a 4-inch belt squashes everything a bit too much. However, most high-level super heavyweights will use a 4-inch belt and they'll just move its position up or down to give them more room. A 4-inch thick belt is the most common that you're going to see. That's what almost everyone uses. It's going to be good for almost everyone. It's what I would recommend you buy because you will just get more support from a 4-inch belt than a 3-inch belt. In terms of thickness then, which is how thick is the leather or the material that they use to make the belt, there's usually two options. 10 millimeter, which is going to be fine for people who find a 13 millimeter too stiff. And often they are a little bit cheaper as well because they use a bit less material. I actually think a 10 millimeter belt is going to be good for most people. The 13 millimeter is the maximum thickness that is allowed of a belt in competition. And they're great for people who want maximum support and who don't care about being uncomfortable. See also stiff sleeve. So if you're a stiff sleeve lover, you might like a 13 millimeter belt. But to be honest, the amount of actual support that you get from them is very similar. And it's really just about how much thickness can you tolerate. So yeah, I would say for most people, either option is going to be good. Again, you'll tend to see smaller lifters choosing the smaller, thinner belts. In terms of options then, examples that you can buy from, I've put 4 up here, but there are actually many more brands for belts that you could shop from. But these, again, UK-based ones that are most popular in this country. The first two here on the left are Strength Shop. So you've got a single prong Strength Shop belt there, and the blue one is a Strength Shop lever belt. Again, Strength Shop have got other belts on their website that are not IPF approved, so make sure you check for the logo and you check you are getting the right one. You can see here as well how the lever buckle belt is a bit more expensive than the prong, but these two are both decent options. I had a Strength Shop lever belt for my first 3 years of competing, I think, before I upgraded to a leather, like a more expensive one. But I know lifters, again, at the highest level, international level, that use a Strength Shop belt. They're absolutely fine and are going to be a great option for you if you're on a budget or if you're not sure if you're going to be powerlifting forever. They're a good option to go for. Here on the left of the screen, then I've got 2 options. So the one at the bottom, the buckle belt, is an A7 buckle belt. And I actually really like this design because they don't just have one line of holes, they've got alternating holes. So it just gives you smaller adjustments, because one downside of most belts is that you might be in between holes. And so one hole is too tight, but the next one down is too loose. And A7 have really got around this quite nicely with this design. But it is very pricey. As you can see, it's £195. A7 do also have their own version of an adjustable lever belt as well as their buckle belt. So yeah, a good option if you are looking to upgrade and buy like a top end belt that's going to last you forever. Likewise, SBD have their buckle belt, which is a fully adjustable lever belt. It's £220, so it's a very, very premium product, and again, very, very popular at the highest level. If you buy one of these like more expensive belts here, they are literally going to last you forever. Unless you need to get another size, you are probably never going to have to trade your belt in for a next one up. These are going to last you forever. They're really well made, nice quality products. I also wanted to give a shout to Wallanders, which is a brand, I think a Swedish brand. And this is the belt that I own. It's £170. And it's a quick release buckle. So it is a 2-prong buckle belt, which is what I said you should avoid getting a couple of slides back. But this one is quick release. So it's actually very easy to get in and out of this one compared to a normal belt. You simply just pull on the mechanism and you're out. Compared to like faffing about with 2 hands, you can get in and out of this with one hand essentially. And I really, really rate this brand. Again, they've become quite popular more recently. And again, I've tried a few different belts. I started with a strength shop. Then I bought one of the SBD £200 ones, and I did not get on with it at all because I found it a bit too stiff. This was before they introduced their 10mm. So I had a 13mm strength shop belt, and a friend of mine lent me her Wallanders for a belt for a competition once, and I found it the most comfortable and most supportive thing ever. So as soon as I had the budget for it, I sold my SBD and bought one of these, and I've never looked back. So I do highly rate them as a brand. But all they really do is belts. But yeah, really highly rate them, and they are IPF approved as well. Moving on to wrist straps then. So you'll typically see these worn for bench and squat. They do have to be purchased from an approved brand. They, unlike a knee sleeves and a belt, I would say that wrist straps don't really offer a significant strength benefit. It tends to be more of a comfort thing, whether you want to wear wrist straps or not. They're not actually going to help you lift more weight, other than unless you get distracted by pain. But they don't actually have like a real significant contribution to your total, unlike a belt and knee sleeves will. So unless you really need wrist straps, I just wouldn't bother getting them, and a lot of top level lifters don't use them. There are 3 types. They are overlapping once again, depending on what brand you buy from. There's flexible, which are a very stretchy fabric, and they offer a moderate level of support. So these are like super elastic, super stretchy. And then you've got the medium, which are somewhat stretchy, but they're not going to be as stretchy as the flexible ones. And they offer good support. And then your stiff ones, which are very inflexible. They're not going to stretch much at all. And they're going to offer you mega support. Again, how flexible or stiff you want your wrist straps to be, they don't really contribute to performance once again. So it's really about comfort. You see top level people using super flexible ones, super stiff ones, and everything in between. For me personally, I prefer a more flexible wrist strap. I do wear them because I do feel discomfort if I don't wear them. But for me, just a short, very flexible wrap is enough to just get rid of all that discomfort. Anything that's too stiff, you can actually restrict your movement a little bit, which depending on how you bench press, may be benefit, may not. So yeah, it's really about personal preference when it comes to wrist straps. They do come in a variety of lengths as well, as I've said. So as a rule of thumb, I would say go as short and flexible as you can to start with, unless you're a massive bencher or squatter and you have very weak wrists. For most people, just a short, flexible wrist strap is going to be absolutely fine, I would say. Just to give some examples once again. So again, they have to be approved from a purchase from an approved brand. You've got the Strength Shop cheapest version here. Now, Strength Shop have actually got an array of different expensiveness in different stiffness and different lengths. I've put the cheapest one here, which are the shortest and the most flexible ones you can get. And these are the ones that I recently bought for myself. I actually had a more stiff, longer, more expensive pair of wrist straps prior to this. And again, I've downgraded here because I found they were too much. And these cheapest Strength Shop ones are actually the best wrist straps for me. And again, I've been in the game a long time. So the most expensive ones and the longest and stiffest aren't necessarily going to be the best for you. It depends on what you prefer. You've got the SBD ones, which come in a flexible and stiff and a few different colors. They're £35, regardless of the stiffness that you buy. And same for the A7, £35. They come in more. I think they have 4 different levels of stiffness for the A7 ones. £35, and again, a variety of colors and things like that, depending on your preference. So that's wrist wraps. So just to sum everything up then, because I've covered everything now that you need or may want for your powerlifting competition. The key takeaway that I want you to get from this is that you have to read the rule book and check the approved list before you buy anything. You can find the rule book at the link on the screen, powerlifting.sport, and then go to rules, codes, and info. They have the technical rules, which outlines all the specifications for things like the maximum thickness, the sleeve length on your t-shirt, your sock length, and all those things. And then you have an approved list, which is where you have to buy an item from an approved brand. They've got a list of all the products that you can buy that will be approved. So check that if you're in doubt. As a beginner, you only need the basics, and that's a singlet, t-shirt, socks, and shoes. However, if you want to become more competitive, you will need to purchase a belt and knee sleeves, as they will offer you additional strength. They're going to add kilos to your total if you use them properly, and your competitors are going to be using them. So if you want to be competitive and you want to keep up, you're silly to not use these things. However, if you're just doing this for funsies and just to try it out, you don't need to spend all the money. It's fine. You can do this cheaply. So you can buy a belt and knee sleeves and not spend a load of money. And these things will last you some years. But if you do buy cheap, you may end up upgrading your things down the line if you do decide you're going to be a powerlifter forever. So if this is something that you really want to get stuck in with, you really want to spend years, you want to go up the levels and put the time in, it's probably not a bad idea to invest some money up front and buy some decent things, because they're just going to last you for your whole powerlifting career. I would only recommend buying cheap if your budget is really limiting you, or if you're really not sure if you want to do this long term. Because like I've said here, if you buy a high quality belt and knee sleeves, although they are expensive, they are going to last you forever. You're not going to need to upgrade them again. A final tip from me, this is just my opinion, but unless you have got infinite money and really care about fashion and the latest trends, do not get caught up in the latest big launches from A7 and SBD. Now, SBD in particular do massive launches a few times a year where they'll release a new colorway, and there'll be loads of marketing. They'll have a singlet, t-shirt, wrist straps, knee sleeves, everything in that color. They'll have a massive marketing campaign. All their top athletes will be wearing this stuff, and everybody will go out and buy the full set. Okay, A7 do this too, but to a lesser extent. And what A7 do that's different from SBD is keep all their colors in stock. SBD big launches tend to be limited edition, so when they go out of stock, they don't replace them. Whereas A7 do tend to keep all their colors in stock at various points. However, if you do this and you go, my God, all my favorite lifters and everybody on Instagram is wearing the brand new blue SBD set, I'm going to buy it too. In a year or two's time, those colorways are going to be out of fashion or old news. Okay, so unless you really care about being current and you're happy to buy the new colorway every single time, you're probably best just sticking to the basics. So all black, black and white, or black and red. Black and red is a very classic colorway in powerlifting because of SBD, and it's their main brand colors. But yeah, if you buy from those colors, you're never going to be out of fashion, and it's going to go with whatever you buy. You can still mix it up. Like you could wear a black singlet with a pink shirt, or a black singlet with pink socks, or a white singlet. There's a white singlet. You can wear a white singlet with a black shirt, or whatever you want to do. You can mix it up and still be jazzy. But in general, I would recommend sticking to the basics. But that's just my opinion. So that is everything. So hopefully that has been helpful. That has answered all your questions about equipment and what to wear, what you need to buy for a powerlifting competition, what you don't need to buy, where to buy from. And yeah, I think that's really all I have to say about it. Again, if in doubt, powerlifting.sport and then rules, codes, and info is going to answer all the questions that you have. If you're about to compete for the first time, I wish you the best of luck and I hope it goes well for you. Thanks, everybody.